Drums keep pounding a rhythm to the brain. La da 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 dee. Da 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 da. Drums keep pounding a rhythm to the brain. La da 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 dee. Da 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 da.
What's going on, guys? We're back with another Mitch on the Mic live stream. So today here we have Jeff Hamon, and it looks like today, I think Facebook is actually going to play ball. So I don't know if you actually caught much of last week's stream. I don't think many people managed to catch a live stream of last week because Facebook just didn't want to play ball. But yeah, today we actually have legendary Australian racer Jeff Hamon. So Jeff, introduce yourself.
Hey guys, like Mitch said, I'm Jeff. Nice to meet you, and good to be back on the show.
And you've been doing a fair bit of racing as of late, as to my knowledge, as to a lot of people's knowledge, especially as of now. Racing down in Sydney for the GT World Titles held at New South Wales. Obviously, really good weekend, which we're going to go through results and that sort of side of things as we go through. Just a bit about our talk today. We're going to go through the overall sort of structure of the event. We're going to go through, the cars themselves, how they've probably progressed over the last few years. They've changed quite a bit, obviously, in the last few years. And yeah, then we'll go into like finals and that sort of side of things. And we've got a couple of things to talk about after that as well. So we'll start off with the actual event itself. What did you think about the event? How did you find the event itself and that sort of side of things?
Well, I guess having an IFMA World Championships in your backyard, so to speak, is a pretty exciting thing. Obviously, it's still a track that's 1,000 kilometers away to get to, so it's not exactly home. And a lot of the internationals might think that it being in Australia, you've got a bit of an advantage, but it was really great to enjoy the event with fellow racers as well, because obviously when you do some world championships internationally, there's only a select number of people that can go in the Australian team. So it was really nice to experience that with everyone that with familiar faces, and really good that we did have a super strong international presence. A lot of guys from Italy and Asia. So that was really good to make it special. The club did an absolutely amazing job turning the track into what it was, with all the banners and signs and organizing and whatnot. So that was really impressive on the first sort of time rocking up to the track and seeing the transformation to what it usually is, just being, your normal Australian RC track turned into a world champ sort of internationally standard type thing. But yeah, it was really good. The event itself ran pretty awesome. Like all events, there's always the hiccups and things to overcome, but yeah, I think the club did a really good job, and I think everyone that attended really enjoyed it as well. So yeah, as an event, it was top notch.
Yeah, epic. So bit different, obviously, from 10 scale. So we obviously generally focus on 10 scale off road here. Nitro, obviously, they run a fair bit longer in their sort of races, qualifying, that sort of side of things. What is the actual qualifying time for an IC GT car?
Yeah, so the GT class actually has a pretty interesting set of rules that they're loosely were kind of shaped off buggies. So manufacturers that made buggies could kind of use a lot of the same parts and build an on-road car to get into the market. So I guess the rules and the times and the qualifiers are sort of semi-based around that a little bit. But 7 minutes, to answer the question, is the length of the quali. So usually a 3-minute warm-up and a 7-minute run. And the interesting thing with the GT class is during that 7 minutes, you're actually not allowed to refuel. So the motors are tuned, obviously, for max performance. If they're overly tuned, then it's extremely hard to make that 7-minute sort of time bracket without, driving differently or using the throttle in a different sort of way than what you would like to, which gives it its own sort of, unique style of driving for quali. But yeah, 7 minutes for qualies, and yeah, the final was 60 minutes. So
60-minute final. Yeah, long time up in the stand.
Yeah.
qualifying wise, how'd you go in that? Where did you find yourself? How did you feel throughout qualifying? That sort of side of things.
We'll kind of go back to the old refueling thing and running 7 minutes and being able to do that. That, like everyone, I think at some point during the race meeting, it got me a few times. The car was really fast. We didn't have too many issues in terms of chassis. It was more about managing your tyre strategy, because we ran controlled tyres and you only had a certain amount of tyres to do the whole event. So during quali, we were fast, but trying to manage the fuel economy and tune of the motor was probably the most difficult part. And I think, I can't really remember, but I leaned out 2 of my engines during that time and, went through my engine bank that I had. So we ended up qualifying into the super pole position pretty confidently, which allowed me to use the last quali as a bit of a test session to get ready for the finals. But yeah, after I didn't get a TQ run, so I couldn't get the overall TQ, so it was more of just a fight for the super pole position, which was top 6.
Right. And the Super Pole, explain how the Super Pole works.
Yeah, so the way qualifying works in GT and the Nitro categories is the TQ guy goes straight into the main, the A main. The next 5 guys go into a Super Pole, which is a shootout. So pretty much everyone gets a little warm up, and then you're on the track by yourself for, I believe it's 6 laps. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. And your fastest lap counts. So that's the winner of Super Bowl gets also directly into the final. So it means that you get to skip the semis and get the direct spot.
Right. So 2 drivers in the end will automatically go straight through without having to go through the semis and that sort of side of things.
Yeah.
Okay. With that, do you think there's actually any disadvantage to not racing semis? Obviously, there's always a concern that if you have an issue and that sort of side of things, is there any, say, disadvantage potentially to not running a semi?
Yes and no. It's like everything. I think it depends on your package at the time and how the car was in qualifying and where it's at. I think maintenance wise for the finals. So if you're running for a position in quali and driving the car as hard as you can, and you might need to do some maintenance with your clutch or 2-speed, etc. You don't really get an opportunity. So to do that before a semi, you can risk that, I guess, a little bit easier rather than into the main. But there's also a different approach that you go all in for the semi, and if you make the main in a world champs, you're top 10 regardless. So, it doesn't matter from there. But yeah. I guess it depends on how you feel and how everything else is feeling and what sort of pace you're at beforehand.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so the top 2, or the 2 drivers that made it straight on through were Alex D'Angelo, who was your top qualifier, I believe, and Tony Gruber. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but I believe that one's correct.
Yeah, so D'Angelo, he TQ'd with a couple of good runs at the end, and then Tony won the Super Bowl. Right,
and as you mentioned, it looked like a pretty good event. I unfortunately didn't get to watch a huge amount. Broadcast was done by I always forget it. RC Race Media, and they're doing a superb job on keeping track of racing and that sort of side of things in Australia and obviously worldwide now as well. They've been to, I think, Thailand for the ABC over there, Thailand for the on-road version of the ABC. That was a Scotty Ernst event as well. So those guys are doing an epic job on the live streaming side, and they just keep upping their game. So unfortunately, I didn't get to catch a huge amount of it, and caught a little bit up on the replay later on. With the actual World Championships itself, do you think there's any improvement they could potentially make on like the structure of it, or are you pretty happy with how the actual structure of the event is for the GT World Title, say?
Yeah, for the GT, it's a relatively new IFMA World event, so they kind of, I guess, took the best parts and the worst part, or took the best parts of a lot of the IFMA events and condensed it a little bit. So I think there was a bit of talk about trying to make it even shorter again, but I'm not sure how that would be possible without shortening qualifiers and whatnot.
Right.
But in terms of the structure, it's kind of your classic IFMA event, which is pretty old school, 6 qualies, your semis, your finals. Everything ran like clockwork at the club. So, it was
Oh, we've lost him.
with
Back.
this event, we actually ran EP as well.
Yep, we lost you for a second then.
Oh, I thought, okay, cool. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
All right, sorry. They also ran EP alongside it because of the low sort of entries, which I think they're talking about running their own event. So the EP was a World Cup. So there was a day for us Nitro guys that, we didn't need to be at the track, which is Friday. So they can shorten it type thing. But yeah, the overall is fine, the IFMAR event style. There's obviously, you can make different changes to make the racing exciting and maybe more focused on racing than quali, but that's an age-old debate with all classes, I think.
Yeah. And we're having a similar sort of thing with the e-buggy 8 scale, that sort of things, where they're having their own world titles now. They're sort of, I think it probably doesn't help the location is probably the best for it, but do you think they'll sort of get the numbers that they're hoping for when it comes to say an electric GT world titles, or what's your thoughts when it comes to that? Why didn't you run it?
So to answer the question pretty bluntly, no, I don't think they'll get the numbers. The class itself is in its infancy. So, in Australia particularly, we don't have GT regular events like we would have 8 scale and Nitro Tour. There's always open for the events, but they don't get filled with the spots, even leading up.
Oh, lost him again.
I think, did I lose you again?
Yeah, you did. You just keep dropping randomly.
I don't know what that is. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, so I think maybe it will build, but yeah, it's one of those classes that a lot of the Nitro guys ran EP as well. I think there was only one or maybe 2 or 3 guys that only did EP and not Nitro. I personally didn't race it because I wanted to devote my entire energy into the Nitro, and yeah, that was pretty much the only reason.
Yep. No, that's fair enough as well. Especially being up the pointy end. What other, say, people that made the A main? How many of them, say, actually ran the EP class? I know your Neumann actually end up winning the actual World Cup.
Yep.
What other drivers can you remember?
Yeah, Michael Stone. He was a notable guy in EP as well. I know Peter Jovanovic ran the EP and finished second, but had some bad luck in his Nitro, so he wasn't in the A main of the Nitro. I think that was about it in the actual A main, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring results back up. No, can't find it. But yeah, so okay, so a couple of them did run it. So yeah, do you think they would have gotten any extra information from running the EP, or is it just a case of just a bit of extra time to kill?
Time to kill, yeah. The EP cars actually drive way better than the Nitro cars, and they're not easier, but they're probably more user friendly, and they weigh a lot more, so they've got a lot more grip and they've got a lot more power, so you can sort of pull the power to get out of any sort of situation. But yeah, they're unrelatable to a Nitro in terms of setup and also driving style. So if anything, I'd say it was probably a disadvantage doing both and trying to convert.
Yep, that's fair enough. And you mentioned before as well the tire situation. So as you mentioned, you have a select amount of tires you have to use over the period of the event through qualifying and the mains. Does that change if you say make the A main, or does that stay the exact same all the way through?
So that was kind of one of the stickling points of the event. The tires situation changed a little bit. There was some confusion, but I think in the end it kind of worked itself out. The event was planned for basically using 4 sets of tires for the entirety of the event until you make the A main. So you would need to run all 4 seeding runs, all 6 qualifying runs, and your first final. So whether that be the quarter or the semi or the 8th on 4 sets. So during practice, a lot of the international guys, quickly realized that the tire choice was very soft and that it would almost be impossible to run the event on only 4 sets. So a team managers meeting was held, and IFMA agreed to up that to 5 sets. So pretty much you could use 5 sets for all your racing and your first final. And then if you made the A main or the next final, you're able to purchase another set of tires.
Right, and that doesn't potentially give an advantage to, let's say, a driver with a new set of tires that just qualified through the, say, quarter main into the semi?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Right.
you could qualify into the eighth, for instance, and have 2 new sets of tires ready to go for those finals. But I think overall that wouldn't have been a very good strategy, because during those finals, which are quite long, you're still going to burn through a set of tires, and
Yep.
it's there's more risk in having an accident or a failure than there is actually with the performance of a new set versus second or third run.
Right. Okay. Okay, we'll go on to the cars a little bit. As you mentioned before as well, they virtually started out as a 8-scale buggy that they started racing on road. They started chopping down the shocks and virtually trying to turn into a touring car that was probably wobbly and all over the place on the track. What's the progress of that sort of side of things? I know Serpent has their own, purpose-built car now, and a lot of other brands sort of do as well. I think the X-Ray have their own purpose-built car. What sort of updates and stuff have they sort of been making with their GT cars, at least from the Serpent side?
Yeah, so it's been a bit of a contentious sort of point with the chassis and manufacturers. For instance, there's a manufacturer, Capricorn. They don't have a buggy. They don't have any off-road cars in their range, but they have a GT car. So the DNA of that car is purely on-road. The car itself is extremely cool and very different to the normal GT cars with carbon arms and that type of thing. So it's full blown on road. And then you've got the other manufacturers like Hongnor S Works, which are purely off road generally, that have made 2 speeds and whatnot to convert their buggy parts. Serpent's kind of in between. We're lucky, I think, that we can do the best of both worlds. We've got really good off road engineers and we've got really good on road engineers that communicate and have come up with what we have, which is still off-road-ish with a lot of the parts. But yeah, we've kind of pushed the envelope to the rules to make the car as on-road as possible, but on a good budget, which is what the rules sort of intended. So yeah,
Right.
our car sort of hasn't really evolved too much from the original GT. A few bits and pieces to make it lighter and faster, but yeah, nothing crazy.
So you keep mentioning the rules there as well. Is there rules in there that stipulate that it's meant to be based off of an 8-scale off-road buggy, or?
They can't really write that in black and white because it's open to interpretation, but there's one rule that kind of makes it, the off-road spec, which is the kick-up of the chassis. So in the rules currently, there's a rule that says the chassis can't be flat. So 90% of, well, I'd say probably 99% of buggy chassis have a kick up on the front end, so you can mount your arms and makes the car more stable and jump better. But with on-road, that's completely the opposite. You want as flat as you can, and no geometry changes on suspension compression. But I think at the managers meeting during the event, that was discussed, and it kind of feels like the GT class is more going to the on-road side, or that's where a lot of the manufacturers sort of want it to go.
Yep.
With obviously some of the other ones that produce buggies don't want it. So, there's a bit of a to and fro at the moment with that. But yeah, they're as close to on-road as you can with a kick-up.
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. Obviously, running the 8-scale on-road tires, that sort of side of things. How do the actual cars feel like handling-wise? Obviously, they don't feel, as sturdy as, say, a touring car for on-road drivers, that sort of side of things. But what would you say compare it to?
Oof, they're not really comparable to anything, to be honest. I think I've driven fifth scales before. The rubber tire sort of has that feel where the car can move on top of the rubber tire, but also these cars are quite heavy for their stance. They're quite wide, so there's not a great deal of movement there. There's a lot of chassis roll and a lot of the arms are long, so they've got that. But when they've got really good grip, which was questionable at the Worlds, sometimes there was really good grip and it was strange. They can feel really good, and they have a lot of corner speed. a lot of traction on with four-wheel drive, obviously. So yeah, they don't feel like an electric touring car, for instance, and they don't feel like a Fiscal. They are their own thing. They're kind of cool to drive. Yeah.
No, cool. And would you say it's a good beginner class for an on-road driver, or is it sort of more of a, once you're into on-road, you can progress into it, that sort of thing?
No, for sure. I think this is probably the best entry-level nitro on-road class there is.
Right.
In terms of longevity and parts and maintenance and cost, all of that has big ticks comparatively to, say, what we have now, which is 1/10 scale nitro touring. 1/10 scale nitro touring is blown out with costs and foam and fast engines, etc.
Yeah.
So I think if there was more people doing GT and it became more popular, then for sure, in terms of cost per smile, GT definitely has it. And the biggest part about it being big and off-road style, you don't need to be marshaled, so you don't need to come off the driver's stand if you go in the grass. You can just drive off it generally.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Beneficial to my style racing.
Exactly.
Okay, we'll get into the racing side of things now as well. The semi-finals, so you qualified into the semi-finals. As we mentioned before, only the top two go directly into the main itself. You qualified into the semi-finals, and I believe you were top of your heat in the semi-final. Was that correct?
Second, I think.
Second, right. Talk me through the semi-final. How'd that all go?
A little bit of a shit show. Yeah. It wasn't to plan. Like I said earlier, we had some issues with engines in quali. So I had to sort of use the unknown, which is never good. So yeah, we were kind of prepped for everything with my mechanics, my wife and Tim Moylan. So we kind of had a bit of a game plan what we were going to do and ready for most of it. But unfortunately, every single time we came in for fuel, we had a flame out. So buggy guys will know that that's extremely frustrating. But we're able to sort of keep going and eventually finish with a bump up sort of spot and make it through.
Right. And so how many drivers will bump up from the semis into the main?
So the top three from both semis and the next two fastest from either semi.
Right.
Yep.
All right. So you actually started off the 7th position, if I am correct. Yeah, 7th.
Yep.
Bit of a tough slug in certain ways, and more ways than others, I would say. So you had another issue at the start there. Now walk me through what happened at the start.
Yeah, so it sort of goes back to the old engine issue. With these cars, they're very dependent with the 2-speed. And if you have good power, you can have a consistent 2-speed. If your power is questionable, your 2-speed can fluctuate a little bit from when it shifts. So if you have a late shift, for instance, you lose bulk time. If you have an early shift, you can overheat your motor and also lose bulk time. So during the warm-up of the final, I was making adjustments to the 2-speed and actually called a delay. So that was not strategic at all, but it kind of played into my hands a little bit. During the warm-up, I used tires. So, I wanted to get a tune on the motor on it. I didn't want to soak up my new tires. So yeah, once we got the 2-speed sort of okay or within the ballpark, we bolted the new tires on, and our tires were pretty fresh without a heat cycle compared to the other guys that had started their warm-up. So to anyone watching that was in the final, I'm sorry, it wasn't on purpose, but I'd do it again. But so it meant we started from 11th instead of 7th. And I think if anyone's ever started a final, 5th, 6th, 7th, that type of way down the grid, you kind of always think that starting last is better than actually starting in the middle to avoid all that carnage, So it's kind of a blessing. Fresh tires.
Oh, and he's back.
I'm back. Sorry. So yeah, it was good and bad to start at the back.
Yeah. So walk me through the race itself. Obviously, the turn 1 or lap 1 carnage. Once again, I haven't seen any of the replay or at least the start of it. I watched the sort of last 10 minutes of the actual race itself. But walk me through the actual events of the race, how it all went. And, obviously you had to make a fair few passes throughout the 60-minute main. How long did it take to sort of get to a position where you thought, well, it's possible for a top 3 at minimum here?
Yeah, so the race itself was actually really good. There was not much carnage in turn 1. Everyone was pretty smart, I think, about it and knowing that it was a long final. I got past my 2 fellow Australians pretty quickly, Michael and Ari, which was good. They were, I think they knew that I was a little bit faster and was on a bit of a mission, so they opened pretty easily. And then from there, we kind of just chipped away. I had a few battles with Bernard and Aldi and Alex. They had some issues in the pits, which allowed me to sort of gap them a little bit. With my engine and 2-speed issues, I was having to block on the front straight. So I didn't get past, but a few times I did get overtaken down the front straight and then had to make some interesting moves through the corners in the infield, which was, for me, like ultra fun. It was proper racing, and I was able to put the car in some gaps that surprised the other guys, and I think that was pretty fun. We were making some comments over the headset to Bryony as I was racing, and having a bit of a laugh at the same time. So it was enjoyable, the actual race. It wasn't super stressful. All the pit stops that we did were like super smooth and perfect. No flame outs, thanks to Zach for his fuel gun mods. So appreciate it, Zach. So yeah, we kind of just chipped away, made some gaps. Other people sort of had some flame outs and different strategies with their tires. And then there was a point where I think I was running in third, maybe with like half an hour to go. And my teammate, Andrea, he made a mistake at one of the corners and got stuck and had to get marshaled. And we made it past him into second. And I sort of knew at that time there was no way that we could fight Tony. So, we all had our fingers crossed that something would happen to him. But he ran a perfect race, and his crew did really well as well. So he definitely deserved that win. And then, yeah, I guess at the last sort of 10-minute mark, I had a bit of a feeling that if I can continue this pace, then we'd be fine. And we managed the gap between third place, which was Andrea, and yeah, kind of put it over the line and got the result with a smile on our face.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was about to mention that as well. Podium was ranked by bicep size. So,
Pretty much.
yeah, that about correct, you think?
I think Tony's bicep got a lot bigger when he won. Yeah.
I think everyone was just too worried to beat him, to be honest, after that photo came out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to see him next week, but he's a cool guy. We were pitting right with him the whole time, so I didn't see any of his biceps until he whipped it out on the on the driver's stand, and I was actually a little scared.
Yeah. Looked about the similar size to your head, man.
It's close,
scary. Yeah.
Yep.
No, devastating. Yeah, I won't say anymore. No, it looked like you had an epic week, obviously, and that sort of side of things. Results obviously showed for themselves. Do you think you could have potentially competed against him if it wasn't for starting at the back of the grid, or was Tony just on another field at the moment?
It's always a woulda, coulda, shoulda with racing, and I don't want to be the guy that says, "Oh, I could have won that if this happened or this didn't happen." So, all things being equal, we could have had a race maybe closer, put some pressure or something like that. But it wasn't, and he did an amazing job, and his engine guy also did an amazing job. Having an engine that could go 7 minutes with that sort of power is like hats off, and they totally deserved it. So no, to answer the question, the race is the race, and it's been done. So I wouldn't like to think what could have been.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned there again the 7 minute sort of side of things. Obviously come race time, did the motors actually need to go for another 7 minutes, or was that sort of just for the qualifying sort of side of things?
No, so for the final, you also have to run 7 minutes. Or
Right.
Sorry, you don't have to run 7 minutes. That's incorrect. They would not allow you to fill up before 7 minutes.
Right.
So you could run 6 minutes and sit in the pits for a minute idling, and then they give you a fuel bottle and you could fill. But yeah, that's kind of the rule says, which is very, grey, that the engine must demonstrate that it can run 7 minutes.
Right.
So it's open to a bit of interpretation.
Roger. So there was a timekeeper on pretty much every pitman and holding the gun
No,
against your will, or what was the go there?
yeah, yeah, kind of everyone was in ransom in
Yeah.
handcuffs, but no, there was a pit lane scrutineer, and he would open up the pit lane. So he would
Right.
say, everyone's ready to come in if you want. And I think in some semis, some other guys came in pretty early and waited as a bit of a strategy, so they didn't have to do an extra lap. But I'm not sure who did that or whatnot. I just heard about that after.
Right. Okay. No,
Mm.
interesting. I didn't know that about that side of it either. It sounded
Mm.
like a really good week, and I wish I was there. And I was actually in Sydney about the day before it started, and I was hoping to actually be at the event, but things didn't work out that way.
Oh, bugger.
Yeah, no, it like I said, it looked like a great weekend. It looked like it was a really well run event, and everything from the New South Wales club, the racing, that sort of things looked like it worked out really well.
Mm.
So obviously, as for yourself, finishing second, you absolutely stoked with that.
Yeah, it's a strange feeling.
Yeah,
But yeah, absolutely. I think we had pace, and I feel like I deserved it, and I wheeled the car pretty well. So, I didn't have any failures, and I think overall it was a good effort by my whole team, I suppose. So yeah, pretty pumped. But also, you can't help but be a little bummed of, what could have been, you know, winning on your home turf, but next time.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
exactly. Mr. Cossack says everyone's favorite baby-faced man, and
Thank you, Mr. Cossack.
also we also have Aki,
Oh, Aki, yep. Hey, Aki.
Aki. There we go. He says, "Hey, Jeff." So yeah, great weekend, mate. Moving on from this one, so upcoming events we have as of next week. So long break in between the two races from one world championship to another. It will be the IC on road world champions over in Japan.
Mm.
Completely different form of cars, different, pretty much everything. Pretty much just run us through what the actual differences in feel between those two cars. I compare it to say real size cars if you want.
Ooh, that'd be kind of like going from I don't know, like a Hyundai XL sort of stock car to a Formula One, I think.
Yeah.
Um, a total, maybe not that much, but a totally different style and approach for sure.
Yeah. So the IC on-road cars, they're like, are they still called pan cars, or are they, are they
I don't
pan
know.
cars, the electric sort of side of things? What's going on?
Some people say pan cars. I think a pan car is a car without suspension.
Right.
So if a car's got suspension, it's no longer a pan car. But
Right.
they're called 8-scale pan cars. So 4-wheel drive, suspensioned 8-scale pan car, maybe. I don't know. 1/8 IC is the way I look at it.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, big wedge, the door wedges.
Big wedge.
What sort of prep have you done for this event?
Not as much as I'd like to. This event is the one that's like the most historic and the one that you want to win, the one that you want to do the best in. But it's also the one that anything can happen. And it's kind of like one of those events that, unless you're on it to start with and your package is suited to the track, the conditions, then it's really hard to improve a lot. Whereas the GT, for instance, there's a broader spectrum for setup and style and what you do with the car. Whereas, yeah, the 8-scale is more of the track's either going to suit your style or it's not. And there's a lot of things that, have to be absolutely perfect to do well in it.
Right. I had a question there. Jordan's massive comment has just thrown me right off. Like he says, get a ticket to Japan and follow Jeff around for the 8-scale on roads. Man, I'd love to. I've been to Japan for all of about, I don't know, an hour, I think, and I couldn't even get off our cruise ship. Long story short, wasn't a good time.
I'll extend the invitation. You should come, Mitch.
Yeah, I'd
I'm
love to.
sure we'll find you a bed.
Yeah. As I open the offer to the Perth off-road guys, I'll sleep between turn 1 and turn 2. Racing in Japan. Have you ever raced in Japan before?
I have. I actually have been to the track in 2019, maybe, for one of Scotty's races, the ANC.
Yep.
So yeah, super cool track. I think it's owned by Infinity and Kenji, but previous to that was owned by the brothers, forget their names, will come to me. They just won the 10 scale world championships. I feel bad for not remembering. Anyways, it's been there a long time. It has a lot of history. It's a cool location, and yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back there for sure. Sahashi
Aki,
brothers.
Yep, all over it.
Aki.
So yeah, obviously big trip. Serpent team drivers, have there anyone done any laps around there to sort of get a bit of a setup to send your way?
No, I don't think there has been many laps from the team dudes. So I think we're all going with a bit of an open mind with setup wise.
Going a bit blind.
Yeah. Which is sometimes a better approach than going with knowledge.
Yeah. Yep. Understandable. I actually saw that at the 10 scale off road, a couple of drivers were given setup sheets and just didn't seem to be working from the get go, and they ended up revising their setups, and one of them ended up winning a world championship. So I think it might have worked for him as well. So
there you go.
You never know.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, looking forward to that trip as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The competition's going to be crazy. You know, I think they're up to 130 odd entries.
Right.
All the local guys are ultra fast. All the European guys are ultra fast. There's, I guess, a lot of knowledge with the Infinity team as well, which is obviously the biggest team and got the best drivers. So, you know, they're definitely going to have a bit of a step ahead of everyone else. But I think that's also going to be fun to see how all that works. And yeah, I think I'll be more pumped when I get there after I've done as much prep as I can in the next couple of days. But yeah, it's pretty hard to, you know, do back to back for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. So yeah, obviously practice for that starts on Friday the 27th, and we'll try and catch up with that as much as possible for that one. So we're all looking forward to that one. Here's a question. Does Serpent want to increase their market share for 1/10 EP on road? If so, what do you think they need to do?
Yeah. I mean, we have a new car coming. So like most of the other EP on-road manufacturers, they like to release cars every year with different updates. So I think that should increase a little bit of the market share. I can't really speak for Serpent in terms of if they want to increase it or not. I'm assuming all companies want to sell more cars. Whether it's something they concentrate on, I'm not entirely sure. I know they're doing another car, so that does mean they're still interested. And what would they need to do? Obviously, you know, sponsor more people and go to more events and do all that sort of stuff that other manufacturers do. But I think at this stage, yeah, they sort of, like a lot of other companies, maybe focus on what world championships are on during that year and maybe put a little bit more effort into that. So, you know, this year was GT and 8 scale, the next year will be 1/10 EP on road. So, yeah, you never know. They might ramp it up more, but yeah, I can't really speak on their part for that.
Yeah, no, it's a good answer to a good question. Future events after this, what are you looking at, you know, in the next, say, 12 months after the IC on roads has gone?
I don't know. I have been thinking a lot about 1/10 EP on road, and the Worlds is in the US for that. The US is one of my favorite countries, so the more time I can spend there, the better. And I think tying that in with doing some racing would be also pretty cool. So I'd probably, depending on, you know, my podium position for the 8th scale in Japan, will depend on sort of what I choose to do going forward. But, you know, I'd say at this point, 1/10 EP in the US, and then later on in that year, there's also a 1/10 Nitro on road in Costa Rica, which for me would be an awesome holiday, along with, you know, a lot of the South Americans love 1/10 Nitro. So I think possibly next year would be more 1/10 focused rather than 1/8. Yep.
Hearing a distinct lack of 10 scale off road in preparation for the 2025 off road world championships in Australia.
Yeah, it's not my thing, you know. I think there's a lot of on-road events. I'll let you and Chris do that one, and Jared. They can all, you know, kick ass in the 10 scale off-road thing, and I'll support you guys doing that.
No, that's good, man. So it sounds like you got a fairly packed schedule even coming into next year. That sort of side of things, the on-road sort of side of things, 10 scale, that sort of side. Yeah, it's good, good. Other than that, man, I don't have a huge amount more on my little dot point sheet that I wrote up in about 3.5 minutes before we came on live. So if anyone has any questions for Mr. Jeff Hamon, feel free to reach out. But other than that, what would you like to sort of, I guess, would you like to give any shout outs to sponsors, that sort of side of things?
Yeah, I guess. Just probably a big shout out to anyone that's helped me out and all the Australian guys that have cheered me on during the Worlds as well. I felt everyone and all the comments that everyone sent through. I really appreciate it, and it does help. When you're doing big, long events like that, it's pretty mentally draining, and getting a few messages here and there with some support, and that always helps. So shout out to all the Aussie guys and all my international friends as well for supporting me as well. Obviously, got to thank Bryony and Tim in the pits for doing an awesome, stellar job with that. Zach for the fuel gun mod, wouldn't have been able to finish the final without you. So I appreciate you. Sponsors, I think most people know, they can see the stickers on the cars, but Surf and Aramax, the Italian Stallion Gma, appreciate you. Senwa, Hot Race Avid, T-Works, all my long-standing guys, thank you. J-Spec Stickers for providing the awesome merch and stickers as well. That guy's pretty cool.
Good.
And yeah, also the England Park Raceway Club for their support. That was really nice of them, and the PDNR guys as well. So yeah, just appreciate everyone, and if I don't message you back or get back to you, I still appreciate it and eventually will. So yeah.
Yeah. Now you keep mentioning the modification to the fuel gun from Zach Ryan. What was the modification, if you don't mind us asking?
I'm not sure I'm allowed to say it. I think I might have even said too much, but anyone that needs any tips on why their buggy might be flaming out after a pit stop, contact
Exactly.
Zach Ryan. Yeah, he has the answer.
Jeez. And Tony Firth, large scale world championships.
Yeah. Yep. Should be a good event. It's back in Sydney. And hope they run it the same way they ran the GT, which is really successful.
Not looking at entering into it?
Oh, was that the question?
I'm guessing so.
At this stage, I doubt it, but maybe. I'm not saying no. It's a hard one. My old man loves Fiscal. He's going to go crazy for it. He'll be able to give me a car and a setup that I could just go and drive, which would be awesome. In terms of putting a lot of effort in, I would hate to go to a race meeting like that of that caliber without putting effort in beforehand and prepping. I feel like that's not right. So having the schedule or the time to actually put towards it during next year is going to be pretty hard. So that would be really the only reason why I wouldn't do it, along with the world champs. It would be in the similar time frame. So depending on the dates, and if IFMAR's doing what IFMAR does and put every event in 2 months, then it'd probably be a hard no. But if there's a bit of a split or time to do it, maybe. So it's not a no, but yeah, I'm sure my old man would love me to hang out with him and do it. So that would be a big reason to do it.
Yeah. I'm curious about actually traveling with a Fiscal car. How do you get around, say, coming from overseas more so than, say, driving down if you had to fly around with one?
Well, in the past, we've done a couple of international events with large scale, and back then this was pre terrorist attacks and COVID and all that sort of stuff. It was a little easier, I think. But we just bought big steel boxes, like really big steel boxes, and packed everything in and put it under the plane. So I don't know how that would go these days with petrol and lipos and all the rest of it, but I'm glad that I don't have to worry about those logistics. But I'm sure there's an answer to that I don't actually know.
Yeah, fair enough. It's not your expertise.
Not my forte.
Yeah. No, all good, man. Well, I don't have a huge amount more, like I said, on the dot points. So once again, if anyone has any other questions, if not, we'll let you run. But no, congratulations, man. That's a huge accomplishment. For
Thanks, mate.
second in the world, and yeah, hopefully have another great run over in Japan. And I think we're all looking forward to watching your race over there. And once again, we'll all be cheering you on.
Yeah, we can even do a live over there if you like.
It sounds pretty damn good to me.
Yeah, if we got time. But
Yeah. Alrighty, we'll see what we can hook up.
Perfect.
Too easy, man. Thank you so much for jumping on, mate. I really do appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you. Thanks.
Oh, we lost him prematurely.
I just got back. Thank you, guys.
Alrighty. Thanks so much, Jeff, and we'll
right,
we'll
mate.
talk to you soon, mate.
Too easy. Thanks, guys.
Oh, we'll change that one over. And enter that one. Alrighty. There we go. Couple of I think internet connection issues. But no, good chat with it in there with Jeff, as per usual. Really good dude. As actually I'll bring that comment back up from Jordan Kozik. Let's see if I can find it. There we go. I got to say, Jeff has been one of the most humble and fun people to be around, and a wealth of knowledge, and explains things in a way that everyone can understand. We need more Jeff content. Yeah, no, good point. A really good point from Mr. Kozik there. That yeah, Jeff is just a proper stand-up dude. I've had the opportunity talking with him plenty of times in the past, and look forward to talking to him plenty more in the future, both on live stream and in person. Proper, really good dude. Alrighty, guys, we'll pretty much wrap that one up here. A bit of a shorter one, which is a little bit different to what it's been the last couple of streams. Nice and quiet 45-minute stream instead of the usual 2-hour one. So hope you guys enjoyed that one. Thankfully, Facebook Live was actually working alongside us today, unlike it was last week. If you haven't already checked out that live stream, though, by all means, check it out. Skip the first 10 minutes of the Andrew Savaggi and myself chat. It was actually a really constructive chat that we had about the 10 scale off-road world championships. Let's see. And Jason Toon, that's a good question, mate. Will he be interviewing Carl McBride at all? I've reached out to him. I've told him he's more than welcome to jump on if he's interested, and I'll leave that with him. That's completely up to him. He said he'll get back to me if he's interested, that sort of side of things. So yeah, completely up to him. I'd love to have a chat with him on stream and see how he's getting on, see what his plans and stuff in the future. But in the end, it's still his private life. So I'll have a bit more of a chat to him over in Perth. So he is actually attending the 8 scale off-road Australian national title. So I'll definitely have a bit of a chat to him over there and see what he's up to and see how he's going and that sort of things. But I know he does have a different outlook on racing at the moment. So, and I think big ups to him. It's a hard game to be in when you're at that sort of level. So whatever he wants to do, and I think we're all behind him on that sort of side of things as well. But yeah, if you haven't sort of looked up the 8 scale, or sorry, the IC on-road titles, that sort of side of things, keep track on it. Jeff, as we mentioned, will be racing in that one as well. There's a couple of other Aussies heading over there as well, a couple of Brisbane locals. Jesse Davies also heading over for that one. Luke Duthie from New Zealand, he'll be racing that as well. Big contention for those guys, and definitely hope to see them right near the top as well. So look forward to it. Keep an eye on it and keep cheering Jeff on, guys. And we'll see you in the next one.